Sure thing. And thank you so much. I would love to be a part of the community. Just otherwise, within Microsoft, also I lead the Cyber Women Initiative for Asia. So happy to bring more people in the community and just learn together. So just before we get started, just a quick introduction to who I am. My name is Neha. I am a part of the cybersecurity organization in Microsoft, although we will be talking about AI today, and have been here for close to 2 decades now. And I work very closely with customers and vendors and organizations overall, just helping them transform digitally but more securely, right? And in my current role, I do strategy and operations, which is a fancy way of saying responsible for business growth, as well as my neck is on the block. With regard to all the reviews we have for our commercial, corporate, and SMB business for Asia. Now, we are here to talk about AI. And the goal today would be just to give you a little bit of a sense of where is it that AI is getting incorporated in sports tech, but then also share and create awareness on where are the risks around AI as well. Because it's a nice, shiny object. It can do great things, but like any great new technology, it has a good and a bad. So just creating awareness around where are the risks, what should we be thinking about when we are creating applications that leverage AI. And the fact that we need to have an accountability towards when we are designing, developing, and deploying AI technologies. And then, of course, give you a little bit of an insight considering, I spent more than half my life in Microsoft. So I'll just give you a little bit of examples of how Microsoft is doing it and share some material that anybody who's developing any application leveraging AI can use. Because there's a lot of public awareness as well as just the constructs, etc., that we've put out in the space as well. Now, since this is a small group, what I will do is I'll not use the whole hour. I'll just quickly go through the content and then open it up for questions. But yes, use the chat window to ask any questions. If I am looking at the chat, I will definitely answer those questions for you. And with that, if we are ready, we will get started. Let me quickly. So Microsoft is right now investing a lot within AI, and probably around the world, the foremost company which is actually investing a lot in AI. So why is Microsoft investing so much in AI? The fact is, artificial intelligence really is something that we should be optimistic about, right? Because it can help people, it can help industries, it can help society, and what we see from our vantage point is how can we bring this technology to people, to industries like the sport industry, and help people leverage the power of AI. Now, specifically in the sports industry, right? Where is it that AI is today being used? So we see in the sports industry, AI, and AI being artificial intelligence, is being used in areas like personalized training, diet plans, player performance enhancement, even in scouting and recruitment, and then of course, the area around referees, AI referees, where you have those VAR systems, etc. But AI is being infused in that space as well. Match predictions. We had Paul the Octopus, but probably AI will do a little bit of a better job with regard to match predictions as well. Then ticketing and marketing, and then of course sports journalism. But where AI is also becoming very, very powerful is in the space of esport, right? Because that's another developing area of sports. It's not just physical sports; it's esports as well. And why is AI being used so much in these spaces? Now, some key aspects that we should know about. What is this whole buzz about AI, right? AI essentially, at the heart of it, is based on knowledge mining, right? Services, AI services actually, they're applied at scale on massive amounts of data, and you're pulling out insights from those massive amounts of data. And that knowledge mining and that insight that comes out of that data actually helps coaches and teams to deeply understand and then explore that information, and that so they can actually process a large number of data points even from one single match or one single F1 race. There is so many data points that are getting collected now that it is humanly impossible to really take out insights out of what does that match, what is the what is the key insights from that match, or how is the player performance in that each match, or where were the mistakes, or how is the car performing in the F1 race. So a lot of knowledge mining helps us get that insight. Now that then can be leveraged to do predictive models, which means we use machine learning to build a model that can predict what will happen, right? And once you have those predictive models, it can improve your decision making, right? So that's where match predictions can come in. So you have massive amounts of data about massive amounts of matches, and you do knowledge mining on that. You have insights coming out, and then you can build prediction to say, okay, what will the next match result look like, right? So that's predictive models that can be based in. But the same frame can also be used to personalize, which means you're using so much of data. So let's say you have an athlete who's running. Now, if you have data points in terms of how their arm is moving or what speed their foot is hitting the ground, with what frequency, with what friction level, etc., now then you can personalize training for that individual, or then you can have personalized experiences even in the arena of esports. Something that we do from an Xbox perspective, when we personalize experiences for some 80 million people every day, right? So there's personalization that you can build in once you're doing knowledge mining, prediction, and just understanding a person's behavior. Now, personalization is not just limited to an AI tool that you will build. You see that coming in TikTok, in YouTube, in Facebook, where what you see is not necessarily what the next person sees. So that's where behavioral interactions can be picked up as well. And then you basically take all of this goodness and put it into apps or AI agents, where the advanced capabilities in vision, speech, language, and decision making can be utilized to create, again, a personalized experience. For example, somebody who's going into a stadium, their app can be personalized just for them to redirect them to buy certain merchandise that they may have purchased before in some other match, etc. Right? So then you're basically making you're infusing all that goodness into a user experience as well. Now, let me just give you a little bit of a drill down on one example, which is, let's say, player performance. Now, when we think about this one example of player performance, what can AI do just in case of player performance, right? So let's think about, um, you know, uh, a couple of things. First and foremost is, let's say, injury prediction and prevention. Okay. Now, AI models can actually analyze data on an athlete's movement, their training intensity, past injuries that they may have, and then they can the technology can then identify risk patterns, and then based on risk patterns, AI can predict when an athlete may be at risk of injury. Now, imagine having that intelligence, and then coaches can then use that intelligence to modify their training regimes, and then to proactively focus on prevention, right? So those are technologies that are already starting to emerge, where injury prediction and prevention is something that AI is helping coaches do for the athletes. The second element then comes in is, for example, enhancing athletic performance. Now, AI can actually track a player's movements, actions, and whatever performance metrics that they depict. And because it's tech, it doesn't have any scenario of ambiguity, right? So there is more precision with which those data points, because it's data points, right? Data points cannot be ambiguous. So that data point can get collected, and then coaches and analysts can actually use that data to make informed decisions. And when they're making those informed decisions now, you are personalizing the feedback. You're personalizing the training recommendations that can help then the athletes to improve their own skills. So it's not a one size fit all. The performance enhancement is happening at an individual level for the player. The third area, of course, is then you're customizing training plans, right? So when you're analyzing the player performance and movement patterns, you're identifying areas of improvement, then you can create personalized training plans for every single player. And which essentially means you're being very deliberate about skills development. And that then, of course, leads to better on field performance. And then, unlike traditional coaching, where the trainers would or coaches would just rely on intuition, you are really going to every single data point, granular insights, and then you're making data-driven, decisions, which then makes the player performance, more predictable, and that's where you basically leveraging technology to improve and enhance the player's performance. I'll pause here in case there are any questions in this space before I move to the issues that we have with AI. Okay, no questions? All right. So there's a lot of goodness in AI. But anybody who tells you it's going to replace humans today is probably kidding with you, right? Because, their AI is at the end of the day a super brain that is computing the data that's available to it. If the data is wrong, then the computation is wrong, right? Because it doesn't have its own brain to think. Yes, it develops that over a period of time, but today expecting a human level performance out of AI is not the right expectation, right? In fact, I was just, where was I? I think I was attending a Wharton lecture or something, and they said humans are actually less forgiving towards an AI application that makes mistakes versus a human, right? So, which is where I think we need to be mindful that AI is failable, right? Even in fact, when we kind of develop applications and we put out AI, we always kind of now have a subline that says AI is not 100% perfect. Please make sure you have a human check the information before you, send out that information, right? So we cannot expect human level performance out of AI, because let's imagine we want to predict the next match. We have trillions of data points, but maybe those trillions of data points are coming out of just three matches. Okay. So while we have a lot of data, the prediction on what happens next cannot be accurate just on the basis of three matches. So the prediction from an AI is as good as the quality of data that you put in, right? The second bit is AI actually combines data with code, which means you have, if the data is biased, if there's discrimination in that data, the system will carry it forward. And that's what happened in a lot of recruitment applications early on, where because the data within the database on which the AI was trained was all white male, it would not recognize, a female as a good candidate, or it would not recognize a female or a male also of a different ethnicity as a good candidate. Now, that's where the bias and the discrimination starts to come in, right? So AI decisions are as good as the data that get fed into the system. The second bit is copyright issues and personal identifiable information handling of the AI application. Right now, there's a lot of data on the internet, and a lot of our large language models that actually process information, they have scrollers on the web, which essentially means they may accidentally get trained on data which has copyright on it. Okay, which essentially means that's where challenges start to happen, because how can you say a New York Times information that you're reflecting in your AI, you need to cross reference it. So those things need to be taken care of. If you're picking up or referencing something that is copyright, then how are you making sure that the person who owns the copyright gets the right credit for it? Right. So that's another issue that AI has. The third issue that AI has, by the way, with regard to data, is the fact that sometimes the models become so complicated that even the creator of the AI model doesn't know how the AI system is making a decision, which means that that is not a good place to be in, because then it becomes a rogue system, right? So it's very important that the creators of the applications understand how and why the system is making a certain decision, right? So that's because it's data combined with code. Um, but then the last and final point on this slide, which is errors can be introduced at various levels. Now, in the cyber world, our biggest worry is data poisoning, right? What data poisoning is because a lot of the, let's say, the co-pilots that you have, the Bing chat that you have, or any kind of chat GPT that you have, it relies on a lot of data, right? So if you feed incorrect data, or somebody who's malicious and they poison the data, whatever the AI will do next is also poisoned, right? So for example, you poison the data to in such a way that you say, oh, it is okay if a driverless car is driving, it is okay to hit one individual and let them, fly off the road, but don't hit five people. So then you're basically poisoning that data and that decision making of that driverless car, right? Which is where data poisoning becomes, errors can be introduced at various levels within the AI frame. Or then there was another program on Netflix, which I forget the name of, but one of the things that happened in an AI model within the model was they flipped a 0 to 1, and that was the model to define the toxicity of a drug, right? So from helping creating helpful molecules of a drug, it started to make the most toxic molecules. And I'm happy to share that research. I'll just look for it and share it with you, where the researcher actually ended up in 6 hours creating 40,000 most toxic, molecules in the world, right? So the moment you are either modifying the data or modifying the model, the system can actually create, weapons of mass destruction as well, right? So which is where AI should be handled with care also, right? And that's where when at Microsoft we started to dabble into AI, there was a framework that we put out, and this framework is available for anybody who's developing applications. There's a full framework that we put out, and in fact, this aligns to a lot of the AI regulation that is starting to come out as well, right? Because EU wants to regulate AI. There are government bodies, the National Standards Institute in US is starting to create an AI framework as well to say what is allowed and what is not allowed, right? And within that, there are a few things that we should think about when we are building applications. First and foremost, how are we taking care of fairness? Does the application we put out when we design an application, is it fair to everyone, right? Or is it biased? Is it biased? Is the data that I'm collecting to train my application, is the data fair? Again, the example that I gave of Amazon, where the data itself said, in order to hire someone, they need to be of a certain categorization, and the data they fed was primarily white male employees, because that's who they used to hire before, right? So, which essentially means the AI application would auto reject women or people of color, which is not fair, right? So, how do you then create applications which are fair? The second bit that we need to think about when we are creating applications is how reliable and safe is it? In ChatGPT, for example, when somebody puts a prompt saying, "Show me where to buy a gun in Singapore," for example. Bad example, but let's say somebody goes and puts that. The AI application should be able to respond and say, "This question should not be answered," or the fact that I will not be able to give you this information, right? Because you're taking care of safety of other people. Now that's we need to build into the system itself so that it is safe for children to use, for example. Then it should behave the way it's supposed to behave. Um, and there is a concept that we deal with, which is called jailbreak, right? Where you actually can break the model by feeding it random questions, and you can jailbreak the models as well. So reliability and safety is very critical, that nobody is able to break your system to do harm to others. The third area is privacy and security, right? And this is a classical example of, one of the things that happened with Samsung, for example, early on, very early on. Um, Having the right data security in place is super critical, because you may have people who will, let's say, so what happened, and this was reported, so I can speak on a recorded call. Somebody took source code of one of the applications and put it on ChatGPT to summarize, right? And ChatGPT is external system, right? Which essentially means the source code, which is supposed to be intellectual property, now suddenly is in the internet domain, right? So how are we then limiting or putting checks and balances on the system that we create, such that when employees are using it or when people are using it, there is privacy, there is security in place, so that inadvertently intellectual property doesn't get shared, or PII doesn't get shared as well, personal identifiable information as well. The fourth area is around inclusivity, right? Ethnicity of people, age of people, So when again, inclusiveness comes from the data set itself. When we are actually picking up the data set to train our models, we need to be very careful about the fact that it is inclusive for everyone, right? It should not discriminate in terms of opportunity for people just because of certain reasons, right? Just because I am visually challenged, I should not be excluded from an opportunity of working at Microsoft, right? Which essentially means, there is inclusivity that should be built into our tools as well. The fourth area is around transparency, which means the models should be created in a way that they don't run amok. One of my very nice industry colleagues, he always, and he works in the ports industry, and he says, I don't want my forklifts or on the ports. I don't want my cranes to randomly decide one day to move in one direction or the other, right? So that's where the models need to be so they should always be under human control, and we should always know how the model is going to behave, so that random things don't happen. There's transparency on how actions are being taken. And the fifth and the sixth bit there is, anybody who's building applications on AI should be accountable for the fairness, reliability, safety, privacy, security, inclusiveness, and transparency of that application, right? So there should be accountability on people who build those applications. Now, these are principles, but for developers, what we've essentially gone and done is, fine, these are principles, good to talk, good English, but what does it actually mean, right? So what we did in June 2022, and we've just refreshed it. This is an older slide, in Q3, Q4, which is in the last 6 months. We've refreshed a standard. So we've actually written down a standard which says, what are the goals we should achieve? What are the requirements? What are the practices you need to build in? What processes should we be worrying about? How should we approach training of an application? And then how should monitoring, reporting, and auditing of applications work? Because ultimately, AI governance is something that is becoming more and more and more critical as well. And in fact, in Singapore, there's a lot of work that's happening around regulating AI, because everybody's very worried. In the government, everybody's very worried in terms of use of AI. So, which means if we look to build applications to service sports fans, right, we should be thinking about um, the safety of those of those fans and their data as well, right? So that's where if you're dabbling into creation of applications leveraging AI, governance is first and foremost super critical, right? And what does governance really essentially mean? It means that there should be a significant oversight of any impact that can happen on people. For example, and this is a real case, an organization came to us and said, and an organization in the government came to us and said they want to use facial technology to recognize people, right? And we actually went and said no to an opportunity, which was a multi-million-dollar opportunity, because it could have adverse impact on certain ethnicities of people, right? You could identify, if the government is not democratic government, then they could use that technology to identify people of a certain ethnicity and maybe uh, uh, you know not behave well with that ethnicity, right? So it is important when we are building applications, we think about the significant impacts on society, on humanity, on humans, because any technology should be in the service of humans. It should not ever be built in a way that it harms humans, right? That becomes super important. Then again, so basically, how are you then going and doing human oversight? What's your data governance and management capability? If there are failures, how will you remediate them? Very important. And then how are we actually going and complying to the standards, which, by the way, are going to be super, super, super difficult, because one of the things we were actually laughing about, not laughing about actually, we were actually reminiscing about is we went through a major overhaul of data privacy regulations in the world, right? You had GDPR that came up in EU, and then one by one by one by one, every country, at least in Asia, is redoing their data privacy regulations, right? And in Singapore, it is very strict. India just launched theirs. Japan is redoing theirs, and so on and so forth. And now, on top of that, you will have this AI regulation, which, by the way, every country will have their own. Probably industries will have their own as well. So, one, we had to deal with the privacy regulations. Two, we had to deal with industry specific regulations, let's say in financial services, etc. And now, three, we have to deal with another set of regulations, which is the AI regulations. Anybody who's dabbling into building applications, leveraging AI, please be mindful that there is a lot of regulation that you probably will have to deal with if you have applications that cross country boundaries, etc. Right? And you probably will need to look at compliance country by country. That said, specifically with regard to sensitive use cases, I just wanted to spend maybe 5 minutes on this space. You know, while there is baseline commitments and goal-driven requirements, and there is oversight that you need, there are a couple of areas where we need to be extra mindful around sensitive use cases like consequential impact. What does consequential impact mean? The example I gave around, facial recognition to then may be able to recognize somebody from a specific ethnicity, because maybe, in India, Sikhs wear turbans, right? Or if you're of the Islamic faith, you would wear a face covering, right? So any technology that touches, has consequential impact with regard to an individual, a human, we need to be very mindful of how that application will happen of that AI. Right? So there is additional oversight that I would recommend, and that's what we recommend externally as well, that you should put in place for technology that may have unintended consequences that may lead to individuals being impacted, right? The second area is around physical and psychological injury, right? Now, let's take the example of training plans that get built leveraging AI. Training plans is great, and you can go back and get somebody to train, but think about taking it a step further, and somebody starts to leverage AI to detect or not detect, accidentally not detect certain, life-threatening conditions. So, for example, NHS in the US, in the UK, they are now leveraging AI to detect cancer early on, right? But will I rely on that technology 100% to detect cancer? No, because it's life-threatening. So you will require what the AI has seen and predicted to have human oversight, right? Because a human life is involved. So, which is where there is an additional layer of oversight when human physical or psychological injury may happen. And then the third area is threat to human rights, right? Again, this is an area where we essentially AI systems cannot be cannot be relied on within policing systems, for example, right? Because that can cause issues with regard to human rights. So these are three areas which can have impact without us wanting it to cause impact. So we need to talk to the community. We need to figure out how our technology can impact not just the intended people, but somebody unintentionally as well. All right. Let's go Next, what happened? Sorry. All right. So that's pretty much on how we need to be mindful of AI. Now, the next 2 to 3 slides, I want to spend some time on how is Microsoft helping developers develop technology that is helpful. So what we do essentially is we share our learnings. There is a lot of content that we've developed. We partner a lot with companies like Accenture, Avanade, Cognizant, EY, IBM, Infosys, etc., to really share our learnings and partner with these companies so that any AI that we are building or any infrastructure we are building for people to build applications on, all of these, uh, you know, uh, all this mindfulness is going into that frame or into that platform that we build for people. And then of course we are creating an AI assurance initiative as well, so that any underlying technology we build on which people go and build their own technology that has some of these all of these principles adhered to. I would actually, anybody who's actually going to develop an application leveraging I would recommend for you to look at the NIST AI framework, which actually goes back and says how you should map the data, what measurement you should put in place, how do you manage and govern an AI application, right? This is a US government body that actually helps put the standard in place for a responsible development and deployment of AI, so that when you are creating these applications, they don't do unintended harm to people, right? And I will share these slides with you, where these are the 5 blueprint points in terms of how do you actually make sure that your AI application doesn't cause harm, right? So whether it is using the NIST framework, then how do you put safety brakes for a system, especially if you're dealing with human lives. How does so for example, a critical example here, AI is actually being or technology is used now to manage the physical space in a stadium. Okay. Now, physical space in a stadium managed by technology. Now, that technology, and this was something that was being said for the Paris Olympics as well, where Russian hackers or other nation state people are trying to attack that infrastructure to cause harm that is not just harm technologically, but physical harm to humans, right? And that's where you need safety breaks in your technology where human can override an action that a technology takes, right? And that's something that actually on Paris Olympics, a lot of reporting is happening right now around the risk to sports as well. The other thing that all of us we need to think about is the legal and regulatory framework. AI can do so much for us. I mean, I cannot think of my life without Copilot anymore. Half of my son's homework is done by ChatGPT, so it makes our lives a lot easier. But at the same time, when we are in the business of creating applications for others to consume, we need to be mindful. And just like we would think about, setting up a company, registering with a local government, registrar of companies, and following the law of the land, we need to follow the law of the internet space in that country, complying to the AI regulations as well. Um, and of course, here are some examples of how we are doing it. For example, when you have a chat GPT or a Bing chat, you'd always have a comment here saying this is being powered by AI, don't trust it completely. Always have a human, and you take feedback. saying, you'll give us feedback if we are doing anything wrong. The other example here is around how you reference and take care of copyright, where you are calling out websites from where information is coming in. So you're being transparent in terms of where are you actually drawing that information. You are not showing somebody else's work as yours, right? You are very openly coming and saying, this information came from this person or this person. And no great shakes there. When we do our thesis in any research, we are coached to reference and not plagiarize. So this is more us taking care of plagiarism as well. And we should all, anybody who's building an AI application should do that. Um, and yeah, there's more that you can learn around how to build an AI application securely. There's tons of material on doing it responsibly, but more importantly, there's also tons of material that we have in terms of if you do want to build an application, how to actually go about it, right? So there is learning content that you can leverage. Plus, of course, we have tools and services which are available for free that you can leverage to build to start building applications on leveraging AI. And with that, I'm done with my content. But yes, if there are any questions, any comments, I'm happy to take them now.
So Neha, thanks for that. It's really a very comprehensive, I would say, 101 course on AI in sport, and not only just sports, but generally an AI. So my first question fundamentally is this, right? We all know that AI is artificial intelligence, and it works on, like what you said, processing a huge amounts of data at a speed that the human brain cannot, and therefore that's the essential nature of AI. So my first question is, if AI can only work because you put in data, can
Hmm.
AI ever predict, not predict? I mean, as a predictive algorithm, I know it's fantastic, right? Like, like what you said, football betting, right? You have all the statistics on the players and on their form, and you can predict the scores and things like that. My question would be more like, will AI ever have the wisdom? And I had this discussion with my friend, and I said that AI can never um, tell us what's the next generation issues that the world will face. Is it technology? Is it environment? Because AI doesn't have that data insight. It's something that only the human intelligence or human sensibilities can say. If you are like a obviously if you, I mean, think of those great leaders of our time, right? They are the ones that can, like Lee Kuan Yew. He can see before his time what Singapore would be like.
Yeah.
Can AI ever be like that? That's my first question. Number two, if AI can never be like that, then it's clearly, obviously, that human intelligence will always be superior to AI. And all those movies that we watch about AI controlling the world and robots are all false. So your inputs on that, please.
Sure, and thank you. Because AI can do great things, but it cannot replace humans, right? And in fact, the reason Microsoft has named its products as Copilot is because the pilot has to be the human, right? It's an executive assistant. And all the development right now that's happening, that's just assistive AI, right? It's assisting, humans. And the reason behind that is, again, what really is artificial intelligence, right? In all reality, what is happening is you're gathering terabytes of data, which I can't process because I don't have that human capacity. But you're basically taking terabytes of data and then you're writing an algorithm which processes that data to turn out some insight, right? Now that algorithm, the difference between just generally having insights versus AI is that algorithm learns over time, right? The kind of prompts that you give, the kind of questions you're asking, and it's going and hunting, then it is imbibing that knowledge within, right? So it's like a 2-year-old child where you're actually training their mind, but really, can it think like a 40-year-old individual? Not really, right? So can AI replace us in the next 5 years? No, right? What is AI actually replacing? AI is replacing repetitive tasks, right? those can be repeated, can be replaced, right? For example, how did the steam engine replace a horse cart? It could do what the horse cart did much faster with lesser energy or expansion from a horse or a human, right? So that was also replacing technology with a repetitive task or with a task that was low efficiency. So that bit definitely AI is now starting to do. But can it actually think like a human, have the wisdom, have the visionaries? Uh, you know, it can make a human smarter, but it cannot replace a human in that sense right now, Peggy. I don't see that happening because it's still a little bit dumb. It does not have the emotional
Yeah.
intelligence that humans have.
So a question would be, if I had Lee Kuan Yew still alive and he would be talking and training the data, the machine every day, will that machine ever replace him? We do not know. Then my second question, obviously, is this right? Of course, ethics of AI has always been a big, I mean, topic that we've been talking. I
Mm.
mean, if AI is in the hands of government, we are a bit more assured. Hopefully, it's the right government. But let's not go into that, right? But if AI falls in the hand of corporates, I mean, Microsoft very responsible, but there could be someday a corporate that actually is the mask of a terrible, I don't know,
Mm.
government or terrible person, right? Then we're in trouble. So, therein lies that danger, right? What if someone who is powerful, very powerful in the world, has lots of money, and nothing to do with his life, but just want to do something, and so how can we actually prevent that happening? If you know my question, fall into
Yeah.
the hands of an evil one. Yeah.
That's already happened actually. So let me, and that's where if you really start to think about how the wars that are happening today, I'm talking about today, right? There are real wars that are happening. There are proxy wars that are happening, and no war today is only being fought in a kinetic environment. Whether it is Ukraine, whether it is Israel Hamas, whether it is the proxy that's happening in Asia per se, none of that is happening just in the physical space. And one of the things, one of the conversations we have is till last year, which is 2022. This is the 2023 number from November. We had 3 billion password attacks in 1 month in 2022. By 2023, there were 30 billion password attacks every month. That's a tenfold increase, and that's AI at work. Because the way we have Chat GPT, we also have Worm GPT. Because we are smart and we are responsible, but in the cyber world, there is more money to be made from crime, right? Which essentially means actually cybercrime is using AI, and sometimes more than what defenders are using. So, in fact, a lot of times we as defenders are catching up. So, it's already in the hands of nation states. It's already being used in war. It's a very bad space even today, right? Now, how can we prevent it? I think it is just people who have the conscience using AI for the right ways to actually also protect, right? So while bad people are using AI to harm, there are also good people, good organizations that are actually working with governments, and Singapore government included, where AI is being used to also protect, right? But again, it's AI versus AI, but also human powered AI versus human powered AI on both sides. So yeah, I mean, it's that's already happened, Becky. I mean, we are way ahead of it in the last 2 years.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else have any questions? I know it's a very interesting topic, but sometimes get a bit heavy because some of the issues are really. But I'm so glad that there's much more clarity for me personally. So, anyone have any questions that you have for Neha while she's still here with us for 5 minutes? Adrian, you want to put the survey form in the chat? Yeah. Well, yeah. So we can some. Yeah. Juliana, any question on your side?
Oh no,
How
I
long?
just want to make a good point and
Go
say,
ahead.
what a greater presentation. And Nesha,
Neha.
thank
Neha.
thank you for sharing. And you made a good point, Peggy. I'm Brazilian, and every time I go through airports, I get stopped because m- it's a lot of issues with my surname. My surname is Scottish, and I don't look like the person in passport, they say. So, coming from Brazil, they always say the Brazil is the hottest country and is the number one country that has the number one scammers of passport.
Yeah.
So you can recognize some people from the heritage, but Brazilians, we are so mixed with a lot of heritage. So my question is, every time that I go through airports, I'm stopped. And my question, do you think in the future they'll actually use AI airports to scan people faces to see, if the faces are actually real? Because they are scanning pretty much everything of your body at the airport these days. And then with the face, it's something that I really think about it. And you made a good point, Nesha. I do think that if this gets in the hands of the wrong person, and can actually cause a lot of harm for the global population.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And by the way, airport facial scanning, AI or no AI, that's already happening. That's how we
Yeah.
get into Singapore. In fact, I was in the US last week, actually, and I was amazed that they were advanced enough to do it as well, because generally Asia is ahead on technology. But even at the Seattle airport, they just did the face scan and then that's it, right? So yeah, that's already happening, and actually it's better because when you're doing facial scans, and that's actually not AI, but generally even in a Windows machine, when you do facial scan or when you're doing a face recognition, there are, even without AI, 1,500 points on the face that are picked up as data, right? And which essentially means it is really hard to, even with physical surgery and whatever have you, to have somebody else's face, right? And that's where this technology will help you get recognized as you and me get recognized as me, right? So yeah, I mean, that's already happening, and hopefully it'll propagate to the rest of the world. But it's dangerous technology in the wrong hands.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Olafemi, you have a question?
Can I jump in?
Please,
Yes,
Olafemi.
I just wanted to. All right. Thank you, Neha, for a very wonderful insight that you have shared with us this morning. But one of the things that I look at from the private perspective is, how do I make money uh, from AI? I don't know how to code, but
Mhm.
I know that there are a lot of people who can potentially do coding and make some very good algorithm that can, like you said, for example, in predicting football matches or any other games like that. My question is how, because I mean, from I use Copilot a lot, but I don't know how Microsoft is making money from it. So how do I make money from a potential solution that can be leveraged on like a Copilot or any of the platforms? Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, that's a very existential question, and that has really not a lot to do with AI. It's more to do with technology in general, right? If you have a good idea, and to your point, build an application that addresses a problem that people have, AI will just enhance it. So let's take the example of TikTok. Okay. It was a great idea that becomes better with AI, right? So, which is where the idea at the end has to solve a human problem. And if it's solving a human problem, AI will just make it better, because in the end of the day, and I'll just keep the analogy to sports. Sports is very personal, right? So if you're using AI to personalize, which today a lot of people are. How are you making the experience personal? How are you making it relevant? For me, that's how money will be made. So, for example, same for ChatGPT, right? Um, ChatGPT is the external version, but internally, for example, we have Copilot, right? Now, the way we've segregated Copilot, or the way we've segregated Copilot externally and internally, is the internal Copilot only works on internal data, right? Which essentially means today I can pick up any Word document and make a presentation out of it. I can pick up any number of, let's say, I have PDPA as a regulation. I can pick up a regulation document and say, okay, summarize it for me in 50 words, right? So it's acting as my assistant. It is solving a problem for me, which is saving me time. And that's where, because it is helping me save time, that technology I will buy and use it for myself. So ultimately, it's a problem that is getting saved, which is I don't have to read a 50-page document to get a 50-word gist out of it. I could hire a human to do that for me, and which paralegals are supposed to do anyway, versus now I just throw the document in Copilot and it kind of summarizes it and gives it to me, and my job is done. Something that would take 6 hours goes down to 6 minutes, right? So that's where the monetization comes in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think Neha, that's
Sure.
very clear. So Ella, for me, so I think or maybe you want to have some more comments. Sorry, did I cut you off? Apologies.
No, it's
Yeah.
fine. I thank
Yeah.
for that
So I
insight.
think it comes back to what is the problem statement you're trying to solve, right? So for example, if your problem statement is to engage your fans in the football world, then you can use AI to analyze data so quickly that you can send out the latest stats to your friend, to your fan, or send the latest a predictive so that they can bet online, right? Whatever it is. But you need to define the problem you're trying to solve. That is the human wisdom, I think Neha is saying, that right now they cannot replace. For human beings to have the wisdom to predict what's the next problem or what's the next trend that's coming up, what's after AI, I'm not sure, right? Because I always believe that I mean, I read somewhere, just to finish off, I read somewhere last week that AI actually allow human beings to unleash our full creativity because it frees up time. It frees up the space for us to think, right? So so that is, I think, like what Neha said, once you have to free up the time, then we can really unleash our potential. So I think with that, I want to thank everyone. Neha, you are already on board as our next mentor. So